Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to this session about delivering personalized content discovery experiences. A mouthful, and we have so many things to discuss in this session and 4 excellent speakers to join me here. 5, sorry. There you go. Let me first quickly do a round of introductions and then I'll say a few words about what we really want to discuss. Paul Bart of Bitmovin. What do you do at Bitmovin that is directly connected to this particular topic?
Essentially, we provide content, we provide software tools that help broadcasters and service providers accelerate their streaming business. And our clients include people like the BBC, Discovery, and DAZN, as well as more specialist providers such as the Royal Opera House and the National Rugby League.
Okay, and already, I mean, this is also a recurring theme throughout the Texas event today and yesterday. You know, part of this, what do you outsource? What do you do yourself? You offer services so that broadcasters and others can actually, you know, make this work.
Yes, we strike the balance between providing tools that enable broadcasters and service providers to customize their experience as opposed to digital service providers who kind of out-task the whole managed service. So we kind of strike the balance between solving all the complex video problems, but enable the broadcasters and content owners to customize that experience to their audience.
Okay, we'll come back to that because there's a lot of complicated things to solve there. Rickard, let's go to you, because if you look at this field, it's all about data and preference from consumers and data and information of content and how you match them. You are researching. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Absolutely. So I lead a team of UX researchers within Sky Design who do both qualitative and quantitative research across all stages of our product lifecycle for all of our digital entertainment products. Those being on the set-top box side, Sky Q, but we've also got Sky Go, Sky X, now Sky Ticket, Sky Sports App, got OTT content to it, and I guess the newest form factor and the newest addition to the Sky product family, Sky Glass, and the streaming TV. And those insights that we uncover, we feed into multiple stakeholder groups. So partly into design, into UX, UI design, also interaction design and industrial design, and also a myriad of different product teams as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, no matter what way you look at this, I mean, if you look at the angle of the consumer research, it also, of course, influences the content decisions, the business decisions, and everything else. You have insights across different markets. We'll come back to that, you know, we'll come back to that. Now, then we have Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone Group, and Telenor Hungary, all running services, and also all, which is very interesting in this case, developing their own tools and exploring the tools you could need for content discovery. Let's start with you, Klaus, at the Vodafone Group. What do you do? What is the area that you're responsible for?
Thank you very much, Monique. Thank you very much for having me, first of all. It's great to be back. Yeah, I'm actually from the engineering side. I used to run the engineering in Vodafone Germany for all the TV platforms. Currently, my main focus is really focusing on customer experience and introducing a customer experience solution in the Vodafone Group side. So I spend a lot of time with actually looking what customers are doing and trying to get insights from that, and then together with our product colleagues to act on that in all respects, user interface, in terms of content offering, in recommendation engine optimization, stuff like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Augusto, what is your role at Deutsche Telekom?
Well, thanks, Monique, and very glad to be here with you guys. Really exciting. So in Deutsche Telekom, I'm working with 9 commercial operations. I'm responsible for the product delivery, TV delivery. And over there, we have, I would say, a set of components, and some of them in particular that are doing this product transformation and harmonization are to ensure that all of our customers across Europe, they get the same best experience, the best of content, the best of devices, to also in this converged approach. And the personalization is a very important matter to ensure that they get what they need on the right timing. Yes, and that is where we are heavily focused, and I'll also get back to that.
Okay, perfect. And Anita, at Telenor Hungary, what do you do?
Within Telenor, I am the luckiest person because I am responsible for the content sourcing. You know, as a sourcing guy, I'm in a really great position. And beside of the content, I'm also responsible for the UX UI of the current and upcoming TV environment, which is absolutely a great job and a great task, because same what the guys mentioned, content delivery and personalization is one of the most important topic nowadays in each and every company, especially within Telenor, who is in some way the last one on the market. And yeah, this is it.
It's a big task. And I mean, the Hungarian market is a very special market because it's got such a high pay TV penetration. There's lots there. And but also in some respects, as a smaller player, you are now moving in with big plans, right? So it's competitive market, you know.
It is.
And this competition is going on everywhere between players, but also between different organizations in this whole stack that we're talking about. Let's start at the side of the consumers. And going back to Rickard, you do a lot of consumer research. I'm really interested to know, what are the things that surprised you? I mean, there's some research where you know, okay, it's good to do it, and what comes out of it, we actually knew already. But what are the things that surprised you that come out of the research that you do?
Sure. I think an interesting one is the prevalence of voice UI compared to kind of how it was forecasted 10 years ago. So voice UI enables, you know, very bespoke, very personalized, multifaceted content surfacing on the fly. Especially if you overlay that with voice fingerprints, so you can deliver true personalized experiences. And none of this was something that any one of us could forecast 10 years ago, but it was kind of new. And other things
is that also different market per market? Are there some markets where everybody uses the voice UI and others where that doesn't happen? Because I think it's difficult in Hungary, right? That's not a market for voice UI.
Yeah, and there's different, I guess there's different emotions and kind of beliefs, mental models about how it should work. And different approaches to it, definitely.
I mean, can you say what? I mean, I could imagine. Let's say the English like to talk and the Finns don't. Is there also a difference between? And this is very generalizing, of course. Is there a difference like that, like real cultural difference? Do people want to talk to their TV or their phone?
Yes, and the English are quite polite. There's always a please in there as well. I'm Swedish myself, so I guess I'm bucking myself into that kind of Finnish spectrum of it. But other things that come out of research is, for instance, you know, someone would do a session of watching something intense like Game of Thrones, a couple of episodes, and they would sometimes, or some people would always finish that off by something a lot more lighthearted. And it's a massive opportunity there to surface that kind of content. So content and context and timing there. And I guess it's fun finish up in the third example as well is I'm talking about recommendations like because you watched program X. There's a very double-sided coin. It's very much loved because it contextualizes and personalizes that piece of recommendation. But there are customers and users who think that there's a little bit of an element of shame when it comes to it because of that suggestion, because some people do not want others in their household to know that they have been, for instance, watching a trashy TV series. So there's pros and cons with all this, and you just kind of take that without measure.
The recommendation shows something about yourself that you didn't want to know, or don't want others to know, of course. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, that's interesting. Do others have examples from research that really came from the consumers where you changed the strategy or you changed the way the interface works or the recommendations work? Just curious. The surprising stuff always interests me most, of course.
So one of the surprising things that we learned is, I mean, I mentioned that in some talks before that, you know, we actually see really that customer segmentation happens also on the device level. So I think, so customers on an Apple TV have a completely different consumption behavior on an Android TV device, which I find amazing because I was not really expecting that. But I think one of the things that Rickard was mentioning, context, I think that is really important. I think when I look at our recommendations, we're trying to create more situational awareness, you know, like, is the customer watching with the family? So is sharing the learned recommendations really appropriate?
Yeah.
So I think that is very important, and this is where in future we should spend more work on it.
Following up on that, can you outline? I mean, as the Vodafone Group, of course, you have lots of information about your users, also with your phone, where they are, what moment, when they're active, etc. I mean, apart from what a viewer chooses to watch, I mean, apart from that, what are the other things you use to make the recommendations interesting? I mean, devices, that's a new, there's a new element. Is this kind of user or that kind of, what other things do you use to make those recommendations? Or can you see coming up now that will in future be used? Because it's, of course,
so I think we don't have that in operation, but I think profiling customers and offering customer profiles is really, really important. I mean, in terms of, typically a set-top box is a multi-person device, okay? And that multi-person device is used by many people. So it's really difficult to give good recommendations because then it's always mixed. So if you have a set-top box on in the household, in the living room, you really have to have profiles to be able to give exact recommendations. Of course, on a mobile device, it's different, on a one-to-one device.
Well, what about Augusta, Deutsche Telekom? I mean, a little bit similar. You also have lots of information on what people do when they do it. I know you also have sort of this center where you really explore new technologies. What kind of new kinds of information are you pulling in to make those recommendations more interesting?
Yes, I would say that right now that we have already overcome the first wave of content personalization, and all of us are already reaching probably the second wave, we are now tapping into video into all sorts of ways. So now we don't just rely on metadata that we can also gather, but we can also tap into the video itself to try to collect additional metadata and also emotional metadata that could also help us try to provoke a better connection with our customers. This is step number one. Step number two, also in terms of the awareness, as Klaus correctly mentioned, I fully agree with him. We also need to look at the devices because some of them, they are multi-user and some of them are single user, like a mobile phone. And the user profiles are extremely important feature that has to work properly from a customer experience to ensure that we have the proper engagement. So in other words, day zero, you'll have zero linkage or connection with the customers, but you also bring back that part. The third part is the recommendation engine itself, because it has to be prepared to be adaptable for multiple learn actions or learning mechanisms. And that is where they have to have those enablers in place to collect new levels of data to provoke new use cases, because the next use case can be, and hopefully not, that we have to stay 2 or 3 weeks at home and then have to provoke like learning content for kids or even new other user actions. We have to be prepared for all sorts of use cases. So that is why we have to combine enablers, those touch points, in a, I would say, an effective way to produce this new harmonized experience.
It's quite a challenge. I mean, Anita, you are actually building this user interface for your audiences because it's also in different countries. Sometimes you have the feeling that no matter how interesting the user interface you build is, once people are used to a Netflix user interface, that's what they more or less expect everywhere. Or they're, whatever, their Google, their Apple user interface, they will expect the same thing. So how do you work with that? Do you have very local versions of a user interface? Are these going to be different from area to area?
We have a current OTT solution which does not contain, for example, recommendation in a classic meaning, but we are also developing a region-wise TV solution together with other PPF units. And we had long discussions around the profiling question, around the recommendation and the user interface. What we see that currently our nation is rather an Android nation. So if we consider
I read that 90% Android, it's amazing. I mean,
yeah, like it's not the most proper number, like it can be 80, 89 or something like that, but absolutely we are an Android country. Therefore, what we see that customers usually require or expect those UI methods, what they got used to on the mobile devices. But I fully agree with Klaus. We do see difference content consumption behaviors between Android TV and Apple TV users. And profiling also has some pros and cons, as Ricard mentioned, because yes, when you have any kind of profiling solution, you can give the most proper recommendation to the customers, maybe device by device. That would be awesome. However, if we see that there is any cross between peoples within the households and the profiles, then it can create quite uncomfortable situations when you can link the specific content to a specific user within the household. So what we are doing, that we are investigating what is the best for the customers. Yes, they love the Netflix kind of UX. However, we are a dubbing country, so for us, having the content or local version is the most important thing. It's even more important than the UX. And when UX comes, then we have to keep in mind how they behave and how they consume content nowadays.
Yeah. So for now, you can actually, rule, and Netflix has a very hard time in Hungary because of this language situation.
Absolutely. In Hungary, local content is king, and not just in terms of dubbing. Then, in terms we speak about local production, we have quite a lot of company who is producing content, daily soap operas, and different type of series, and it's extremely important and performing very well. So those channels who are broadcasting those contents, they're performing well.
Well, let's move to that content part in a second. But Paul, you from Bitmovement's point of view, you work with a variety of broadcasters and operators. If you look at the market for this recommendation and discovery, what is the most difficult thing that people struggle with? What is the thing that really is still in the making? Because some of it we know, right? It's like, oh, you like this, you probably like this. Okay, you can like certain acts. What is new? What is going on?
Well, I think the bit that's perhaps most exciting is if we think about live content and how important that is to broadcasters, and then the near live experience, how quickly content can then be made available once it's been broadcast. The interesting aspects on that, I think, is around how you combine quickly getting content available on platforms, as well as using social to drive usage and awareness. So you can actually increase the reach. You can actually use that content through compelling clips that you're able to then send socially to expand that. And when we've got customers like the National Rugby League who have now been able to utilize our tools to get on over 30 apps that you wouldn't have previously been able to do. So I think, content is, it's a multi unified media experience. That's exciting. The other element that we picked up when we talk about Netflix, the tools that we provide and others enable broadcasters of all sizes to be able to create Netflix type experiences. So, historically, those budgets for satellite and terrestrial distribution had to be huge. Now, tools are a lot more affordable, which means that people can get reach and they can use social to get on more applications. So that, I think, is super exciting. And I think the other bit that, was talked about as well is that, people and different demographics experience content and consume it in different devices, different ways. And, the intelligence that's available within services can actually use device recognition to ensure that users get consistent, rich experiences. So, they're not dropping the content and moving to something else. So I think, they're exciting things at the moment.
That is this was a story last week here in the Netherlands, but the fact that your device gets recognized and results in personalized recommendations apparently also results in getting higher prices for some. If you have an Apple, you have maybe more money. So can pitch you at a higher price. And seriously, it makes sense from a capitalist point of view, but from the consumer point of view, it's disconcerting to realize that you're giving away information about yourself purely by your device, right? Let's move to the content side of things. I mean, Rickard, there was one example you gave that I thought was interesting, which was also for the content recommendation that you can also use the subtitling and everything that's going on with the subtitling. Maybe you can give that example, because it broadens the idea of what content recommendation is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one thing that we found from our research was that subtitles are being used beyond its, I guess, main accessibility purpose. So Lucy and my team found that if someone in a TV show or a film has a strong accent, or if someone is learning a different language, or if someone is watching TV with low volume because the kids might be sleeping or whatever, there's a lot of use cases there for using subtitles, like I said, beyond just the pure accessibility purpose of it, the original intent of it, I guess, which is very interesting in itself. And I think the more you start digging into like how people are behaving and kind of what their pain points and their mental models are, you start uncovering all these like little golden nuggets across everything.
Yeah, because if you discover something like this, like they're using the subtitles on different moments, different ways than we would have anticipated, how do you pull back that information into a content discovery mode? I mean, how can you use it? I mean, it's not one thing to observe it, but what can you do with it?
So I guess in this particular instance, there's ways you can signpost that, no pun intended. Like there are ways that you can pull it into the content recommendation profile, definitely. So if we know that you are watching things for whatever reason with subtitles, then we can start putting that in to the recommendation engine as well.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's necessarily always the correct thing to do, but it's one thing that could be done.
Could you also then, I mean, if you use, I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, so subtitles everywhere, no problem at all. You could also start recommending more international fare, maybe, right? Because
absolutely,
apparently you don't mind reading the subtitles, etc.
Absolutely, that, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Klaus, do you have new things that are specifically content related that happen at the Vodafone Group, where you're saying like, okay, apparently they like this, so we do that? Or I mean, how does the content that's out there influence what you do in the recommendation field?
Interesting question. So I actually don't really have any good example, since we do not producing any local content. So we're really just integrating, and that's a clear business decision for us.
Yeah.
So I think different types.
So let's follow up on that one. So you integrate all this content from all these different partners, then you try to put yourself in between the consumer and all those partners, right? Because you aggregate, you recommend, you put stuff together. So for you, the challenge is more to getting all the right information from all those partners about all those different content items, and then bring them together to the users.
Correct.
Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the very important things in our architecture is that we kind of aggregating the content information from quite a lot of different sources. Okay. And then on top of that, we also do a lot of metadata creation on our side, on our own. And you're trying to make sure that we have the best possible metadata quality, because that's the base for everything later.
Yeah, yeah. And doing that, do you do that with machine learning or recognition? I mean, what techniques do you use to make that metadata better or more interesting?
So it's kind of an automated approach. I wouldn't really call that machine learning. It's probably the first level of very simple matching and finding similarities, and then selecting from that the best thing. I think, next thing would be probably that we're looking a little bit more into machine learning and see if we can actually improve that matching.
Yeah.
But currently we're not at that stage.
Yeah, because one thing is there seems to be a big group of series, movies, documentaries, sports, the stuff we know that gets sorted and then recommended. I'm just wondering about the new things. I mean, because of the recommendation engine and because of the knowledge of the market, what is the new kind of thing that people watch? I mean, we know on their phones they watch TikTok all day, or all kinds of different things that are not part of the traditional TV offering. Deutsche Telekom are you guys looking at it, or at Southern or Hungary?
Yeah, so this is an important topic because, as you correctly mentioned, content consumption is not something static. It's highly dynamic. It changes every single day, every single hour. We cannot look right now and we can advocate that 1 month from now, the content patterns will be the same. So in other words, it's highly changing. So that is why, just touching a little bit about the components, we have to have the ability to look at data, understand what are people really consuming, what they're searching for content, what they're not finding in terms of content, what they're trying to explore that you're not offering on those automatic editorial lines that are the content rails. So that is why, of course, we know that there is a true human relationship with content. For example, the smaller the screen, the smaller the content duration. We know that there is this, let's call it content proportionality about that. But regardless of that, we see that more than just looking at the customer patterns, and TikTok is just one example that, of course, other ones will follow. It's our ability to look at the patterns of consumption and to adapt quickly to onboard new and new types of content to basically respond proactively to the customer needs. Probably this would be how we are touching the content strategy, not just from the onboarding, but proactively responding to the customer needs.
And do you already, sorry, Annie, do you already have examples where you found that, you know, viewers are searching for these words, so therefore we're going to change the content we offer, or is this very early days?
I'm going to give just this small example. Sometimes you look at the method, at the search functionality, and we look at what is being inserted from an anonymous perspective. And sometimes we find anonymous searches for Netflix, just Netflix, because they're just trying to find an application, not even a content itself. So the semantics behind that is what is where we should learn from that. We should learn from customers. But since we are operating globally, looking anonymous to that information, it's important to also provide us more cues and more hints of where we should focus the content.
Yeah. Anita, go ahead.
Yeah, what I just wanted to mention that I do think about this topic a bit differently. If we see specifically the Hungarian market, all the big operators like Vodafone and Telekom is providing to the customers like 150 linear TV channels. The question is, do the customers really need 150 channels? Let's see the data, what we gathered from the customers. Okay, we do see what are the best performing channels and what are the rest, what is the niche. Okay, but do I have to cover all the genres and all the segment groups? Why? Isn't it too complicated? Or do I have to just create the technical capability to involve those niche content pieces from different sources and just to give the customers the bare minimum in terms of linear TV? And how long linear TV will be important to the customers? And I'm going forward what the big operators are doing. I mean, not the content distributors, rather the content makers, that they are creating their own surfaces and trying to monetize the content on several sources, and they are keeping the content within their own ecosystem and selling this ecosystem as part of the linear bundle or as part of the linear deal to the operators. So what do I have to do to integrate this third-party application? So it's absolutely an interesting question because due to the GDPR, we cannot really monitor the customers. We cannot collect all the available data. Available means that technically available because we do not have the consent from the customers. Or if we do have this consent, do we have to cover all their specific needs?
Yeah. You have to ask very specific questions, get consent for everything you can collect about them. Is it okay to use your phone device?
Yeah, but there is more than there is more than 3 million households in the Hungarian market. If I'm buying content to Joseph, to Mariska, to Mary, to everyone, then my platform would be full of different type of content. I would rather propose them to use the TikTok.
Oh, and we're in the middle of this huge battle, the battle of the big stream. I mean, you say, how much content do you need? Which is exactly what I told my kids. You know, how much content do you need? We have Ziggo, we have Netflix. Why do we need Apple TV Plus and we need Disney as well? Apparently, we do. I mean, if you can get it, people want it. Then they might not watch it, but they still seem to want lots and lots of content. interesting enough. But in this battle that's going on, knowledge of what the user does and consent to use that knowledge in some markets leads to media operators working together to start up basically a CRM of customers, databases of customers where you opt in and you say yes, and it gives you access to not only one media organization but several. It's just an example of how this market is still shifting and shaking, and people are battling it out. I mean, aggregation is battling it out as well right now.
Yeah, but sorry, one more thought. If you are aggregating different type of content, sometimes it's good because it gives value to the customers. So during the sell process, you can tell the customers that beside of the normal or traditional TV, you can get this and that. However, it means that you are putting a lot of cost into the proposition, independently from the fact whether the customer is using that specific content or not. And we all know from the past, we gathered a lot of experience. I think Klaus and Augusto has the same feeling that sometimes, yes, we acquired services which were not successful. There were no activity.
You have to try, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the question that immediately springs up to my mind is, can we actually decide for the customer what he wants to use?
Mm-hmm.
So in former times, and when we talk linear TV and especially cable distribution, IPTV distribution, there's always cost related to this content offerings. But now with OTT, we're in a very comfortable position that, well, there's also cost related to it, but it's not as much to distribution, that we can offer customers a broad spectrum of content. And actually, that's the important part, get it right, that the customer can find the right content. Yeah. One feedback that we're getting often from customers is that we do not provide enough international channels. So we have international packages, but customers always want to have more because they want to practice languages, because that's their home country. And all those niche channels, it's really hard to make a business case out of it, But people, it's not a lot of people that want them, but if you really want to make them happy, that is exactly that little bit that you have to put on top on the rest of the standard offering.
And it's interesting because on the one hand, it's the very niche that's super interesting to some people. And on the other hand, I mean, the content discovery, and it's even in the title of this session, suggests that people want to see something new all the time. That's how you discover. But look, in my household, I think all of Friends has been watched 3 times from the beginning to the end. How I Met Your Mother has been going on for 2 years. And The Office right now is what they watch daily, and they've seen it, everything. So the repetition of content and the content that makes you feel at home and that that's not about discovery. That's about, well, I don't know. Is that built into your recommendation engines that people might want to see the same thing again and again and again?
Yeah, if we think about kids proposition, this is
there,
the key of success.
Yeah, they're 15 and 18, but still the kids. That's true.
Not only kids. I mean, I keep rewatching Games of Thrones all the time.
There you go.
If I can't find anything else.
Yeah. There's sort of a default. Make me feel good. Give me what I already know instead of show me something new. Okay. Well. I have a question here that came from the audience, and let's read it out. Subscription video on demand providers rarely offer trailers for series like Netflix does. Do you see this as a way to bring a better content discoverability to the users? And if the providers are reluctant to provide this content, are you looking at AI ways of producing such trailers yourself? Interesting question. Who wants to answer that?
I can have a go. I mean, I think absolutely. Look, we just talked about people who know what they want to watch and come back to the same series. But, for longevity, we need to, content owners want to be able to look at the longer tail to create a richer experience. To do that, it needs to be able to make content available and easily aware. And part of that is, how do we promote that content, not just through search, but also how do we use things like social as well as making people aware of that. And that comes down to, you know, if something's just immediate, how do we quickly get that superly fast encoded, put it on social if it's a sports event, so that you capture a scene or certain element, and you know, that can then draw people to that, or there's certain clips from reality shows, and that, you know, the technology is there to be able to make it available. And I think, you know, from that reference there, it's a kind of 360 media experience.
And for the others, because the social recommendations, I mean, people like to watch what their friends watch, right? Or what the others are watching. Is that part of how you recommend as well? I mean, at Sky or any of the other companies, how is the social networks are part of the content recommendation system?
So currently, no, not that much. There's also elements to it, without going into the specific details. But no, not as a whole. But
No.
just coming back to what, coming back to the question as well, I think a picture, as we know, tells more than 1,000 words. And I think a piece of video tells more than 1,000 pictures. So definitely, just, you know, a trailer definitely brings better content discoverability to the user, especially if we're talking about new content that is,
and also personalized, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what Netflix does, the image that promotes a certain series or movie to you is different based on your preferences. So the same
Absolutely.
series has different, so that's all automatically generated, of course. But
absolutely. And if you then overlay that with kind of presence detection to tell who is in the room, or which group of people might be in the room, that's when that gets even more powerful.
Also, just to add on top of that, we also believe that the emotional connection between our customers or users with the content also plays a key role. And we also know that there are multiple posters depending on the person that is in front of the screen trying to engage with that content. So even the poster itself plays a key role. And this content preview mechanism, this is now an extension of trailers because they were humanly being curated, but we are now moving to machine learning curating of previews of specifically relevant parts of the video, also played a relevant role to keep the engagement with the customers even before they touch the video and they want to watch for that. So we also believe that the combination of that plays a key role in terms of customer engagement.
Well, we only have 8 minutes left. See, we're not even at the beginning of this conversation. So what I would like to ask all of you is, where does it go from here? What is the most interesting development? What do you see happening, not this year, but maybe next year or in 5 years or 10 years? Klaus, you can go first. Tough question.
For us, I think it's very important that we get the situational awareness so that we're taking more factors into consideration when doing the recommendations. And then, as Augusto correctly mentioned, we really need to have the enablers in place that allows us to add those things and explore them more quickly. Because currently we're still using mainly existing recommendations engine, and adapting them to our needs is really hard. So generally, Vodafone is in a big transformation where we're starting to bring more and more technologies that we consider key for our product offerings into the company and to develop them ourselves. We just recently announced that we're hiring 7,000 software engineers here in Europe to work on those things. Well, not all of them will work on recommendation, but that's the general strategy, and I think that's where we have to go to optimize the recommendations for customers. I personally, my experience is not really good with recommendations. Even when I look at very simple examples like Spotify, which I use quite a lot, the recommendations sometimes produce sometimes very amazing results. We said, oh yeah, that's something I have known that for a long time. But sometimes it's completely out of the boundary. And yeah, I think that really will differentiate services in the future.
And it's not so bad to occasionally see something you don't like and say no. Yeah, no, but I'm really happy to hear that you're going to build a lot in house. You will battling for all the IT persons with the developers with Facebook who wants to hire 10,000 to build a European metaverse, of course. But I'm so happy that things are being built here in Europe as well, because I think we need to do that. Paul, where do you see things going? Your build company.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting developments we're going to find, as my colleague on here talks Sky Glass, how that one device experience plays out, convenience, ease of use, as well as how more specialist channels are found if they're not part of some of the mainstream channels, how they're found, how they reach audiences, and the ease with which that happens. I think though we're going to see probably a mix of super aggregators and a mix of specialists, and how they're found. I think that there's some of the dynamics at the moment.
Yeah, but this market is constructed of the aggregators, the content producers, it's a big battle still going on, and everybody wants to be there was a session earlier today about the super app, putting everything together, and everybody wants to be there. We could maybe, for the people that don't know what Sky Glass, what's happening there, because it's relatively new and interesting, absolutely, also in this session.
Sure, absolutely. So, I can't give away kind of any details of the direction Sky is heading with all this, or I could, but I'd have to give you afterwards. So, Sky Glass is a true OTT. It's basically Sky within a TV platform, one cable, super simple, the idea that everything lives in the cloud. And I think interesting to that as well is like TV is no longer just about finding and enjoying a film with a family on a Saturday eve. There's a new generation of TV experiences in the making, and it's being driven by new expectations, both from like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but also technological advancements. And as Sky, as we revealed last month with the Glass reveal as well, we are unlocking new capabilities with the camera that's going to be connected to the TV, and how that kind of change things. So co-watching in different physical locations, for instance, and everything that comes with that, from a content.
The social part comes in there. Yeah, with the co-watching.
Content recommendation, personalization, and entire kind of UI experience. But also what's happening with the rest of the connected home. So answering doorbells through TV, video calling, what about emerging trends, what's happening in the gaming world, and immersive experiences. To your point earlier, what's Mark Zuckerberg and Meta up to, and what does that mean for viewing habits? Equally, what's Elon Musk up to, and like the revolutionary shift in global reach of OTT services, monetization of TV experiences, and e-commerce aspects, and what's the role of NFTs. So I think we're in an interesting point in time where like there's a convergence of all of this. I believe the next 5 to 10 years is going to be very interesting, and the opportunity within this space is just massive.
Yeah, it's incredible what's happening right now and how fast it's happening as well.
Yeah.
Anita and Augusto, before we have 4 minutes left, 2 minutes each. There you go. Anita, you go first.
As I mentioned at the beginning, Telenor is currently the last one on the market in terms of TV customer base. But still, I think that we are in a lucky position. Once, because we are building a new regional TV project, a new TV platform. Secondly, because we are not suffering from having an old, rigid legacy platform. The one who will be the most successful in the region, if we are thinking about the near future, as you requested, the one who can be the most flexible and who can react to the customer needs on the quickest way. So luckily we are in a great position. As a last one, we can create a product which is future-proof, innovative, contains everything based on our current knowledge of the customer needs, and hopefully it will
be flexible enough to take you for the next 10 years.
Yeah, at least for the 5 years. Come on, just for the 5 years.
Thank you so much. Augusto, for you to wrap it up, what is your vision for the future? You have a lab of people thinking about it.
No, I think that already picking up what my colleagues already mentioned. So we are seeing one, we need to shorten the cycle for onboarding content. Second, we need to predictively adapt to the content needs in a more dynamic fashion way. Third, in our market, in the Deutsche Telekom, we have the opposite challenge from Anita, which is have a big customer base, and you need to harmonize all of those commercial operations in a way to simplify the product experience, the user user interface and the product experience. And second, to introduce that complexity, but below the curtain. In other words, producing more advanced use cases for customers to predict and to also react against content. So in other words, we simplify the customer journey, but we bring more complexity, and through AI, most about that through the video use cases as well. So that is how we see the future progressing. It's not easy, but it will be very challenging and fun. I can assure you guys that.
Okay, you all have a big challenge ahead of you. I thank you so much for your contribution to this panel. It was much too short, and there's lots more to discuss. But for now, thank you so much. And for everybody watching, there's more panels coming. So there you go.
Thank you, Monique.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.